This is hands down the most intense Korean horror film I've ever seen. Legend has it that 9 people watched it, yet somehow 10 died of fright. All because a family moved into a new house and brought something evil with them. A once loving family of 5 turned into monsters, tearing each other apart in pure madness. The film smashed box office records with over 10 billion won, thanks to its gripping plot, shocking twists, and a finale that'll leave you breathless. From the very first scene, it's high-octane horror. In modern-day Korea, a demon is preying on innocent souls. A young girl becomes its latest victim. A priest recites scripture as he splashes holy water on her.
악의 힘이 저희에게 미치지 못하게 하시고 저희의 영혼을 해치지 못하게 하소서.
저 왜 이렇게 아파요? 힘들고.
She screams in agony the moment it touches her. She begs for mercy, crying out in pain, but the priest doesn't buy it. He knows it's the demon trying to trick him. As he continues the exorcism, she starts vomiting blood, and the demon finally shows its true face.
미천한 너 같은 게 뭘 할 수 있겠니? 이 불쌍한 여자애는 이런 널 신부랍시고 믿고 있구나.
But it refuses to leave her body. The priest isn't playing around. He grabs exorcism powder and smears it on her forehead, then presses a crucifix to her chest. A blast of black smoke erupts from her mouth. The demon, now desperate, makes one last move.
엄마! 신부님이 이상해! 살려줘!
It manipulates the girl's mother, who panics and bursts into the room, shattering the exorcism mirror in the process. Breaking the holy barrier, the priest turns to see the girl now perched eerily on the windowsill, grinning with a twisted, mocking smile. He knows he's lost control, but it's already too late. The priest lunges, grabbing her hand just in time. It let out a bone-chilling threat. It wasn't just here to kill the girl, it was coming for the priest's entire family. Then it lets out a shrill, ear-piercing scream and sinks its bloody teeth into the priest's wrist. The pain is unbearable. He lets go, falls from the window, and is brutally impaled on a metal fence below. Locals, clueless about exorcisms, accuse him of murder. The scandal explodes. Left with no choice, he turns in his priesthood, his sacred duty gone. But it doesn't end there. Even his older brother, Gang-gu, and his family of 5 get caught in the fallout. They move away, hoping for a fresh start. What they don't know is the demon has followed them. They were next on its hit list. Soon after, the family moved into their new home. During the day, everything seemed normal, but at night, they kept hearing the sound of meat being chopped coming from the house next door. The wife was so disturbed she couldn't sleep. Gang-gu, the husband, was ready to yell out the window, but considering they were new to the neighborhood and his wife didn't want to start a feud, they chose to let it slide. But the next morning, things got weird. Someone had hung a blood-soaked animal carcass right outside their window. The gory sight scared their youngest daughter so badly she fainted on the spot. A doctor later confirmed she was okay, physically, but on their way home from the hospital, they found a moving truck parked right in the middle of the road, blocking their way. Even worse, it had crushed one of their outdoor chairs. Normally calm and polite, Gang-gu snapped and stormed off to confront the neighbor, but the moment he stepped into their yard, he froze. The place was littered with animal corpses. The air reeked of rotting flesh and old blood. And then he saw the backyard rock garden was carved with dozens of human-like faces, each one more twisted and terrifying than the last. Despite the overwhelming fear, Gang-gu knocked on the door, hoping to settle things once and for all for his family's peace of mind. Strangely, no one answered. Even stranger, the door wasn't locked. He cautiously stepped inside, and what he saw made his stomach turn. Bloodstains covered the floor. It was so sticky and wet he couldn't even find a place to step. The stench, part blood, part decay, was overwhelming. He was shocked when he looked up. Countless animal corpses hung from the ceiling beams like grotesque decorations. Gang-gu stood frozen in horror. Suddenly, the neighbor appeared behind him, completely silent. His expression was cold, blank, and that creepy, arrogant vibe made Gang-gu instinctively nervous. He didn't dare raise his voice. He mumbled his complaint and left as fast as he could. He thought maybe the neighbor would tone things down after that. But that night, the relentless meat chopping sounds came back louder than ever. Gang-gu couldn't take it anymore. He called the police, but when the cops arrived, the arrogant neighbor suddenly switched to full humble mode, bowing and apologizing non-stop. With the police present, Gang-gu finally had the confidence to speak up. He called the neighbor out for pretending to be polite, when just hours ago he hadn't even said hello. He accused the neighbor of killing protected animals and demanded the police search the house. But to his shock, the yard was clean, the corpses were gone, and the heavy rain had washed away every trace of blood. Unbeknownst to Gangu, this was all a demonic illusion. Inside the house, it was spotless, not a single stain, not even a whiff of blood. It looked nothing like what he'd seen before. He tried desperately to explain to the police what he'd witnessed. But seeing is believing, and no one believed him. Meanwhile, no one noticed the neighbor off to the side. He let out a sinister smile. The very next day, strange things began happening in Gangu's home. Late at night, while his daughter Hyunju was sound asleep, her blanket was suddenly yanked away. She thought her little brother was playing another prank. She sat up to check. But to her shock, it was her father standing at the bedside, staring at her with an eerie expression. Hyunju felt deeply unsettled. And then, Gangu's eyes began slowly scanning up and down her body.
우리 딸 잘 컸네.
She was so scared, she couldn't move. Thankfully, he didn't do anything further, but the next morning, everything seemed normal again. Gangu was all smiles, joking with her like nothing had happened. Still shaken, Hyunju ignored him completely, and things only got weirder. Gangu's usually sweet and gentle wife was suddenly agitated and aggressive. During breakfast, she devoured her food like an animal, rude, messy, and ravenous. Seeing his mom eating so happily, the son picked up a big bite, only to find the food disgustingly salty, completely inedible. But instead of stopping, the mother frantically stuffed more food into her mouth like a starving beast. And then she did something truly disturbing. She demanded her son eat the leftovers straight from her mouth.
우정아 먹기 싫으면 안 먹어도 돼. 여보 왜 그래?
That evening, Gangu got home from work and sat down to talk to his wife. But when he brought up the breakfast incident, she looked genuinely confused. She said she had left early that morning and never made breakfast at all. Gangu thought she was just avoiding the topic, so he didn't push further. What he didn't know was she was telling the truth, and his family of 5 wasn't alone in the house anymore. Later that night, his older daughter Sunwoo was in the shower when she suddenly felt like someone was watching her. She wiped the steam off the mirror and nearly screamed in terror. Standing just outside the glass was her little sister, expression blank, staring, strange. Sunwoo thought it was just a prank and rushed to confront her, but Hyunju swore she had been in her room the whole time. Before Sunwoo could question her further, Hyunju pulled her aside and confessed what had happened the night before. Dad pulling the blanket off, that creepy stare. Sunwoo was skeptical. She figured Hyunju just had a bad dream, but before she could even respond, their father suddenly burst into the room.
키웠는데.
Without a word, he grabbed a box cutter from the table and charged at them. In a panic, Sunwoo shoved him away and grabbed her sister to run for the door, but somehow, their father was already there, like he had teleported. In a flash, he grabbed Hyunju by the hair and hurled her down the stairs. Then he raised a hammer, ready to smash Sunwoo's skull. In that instant, Hyunju jumped in and slammed a frying pan into him. The impact numbed her entire arm, but it didn't even faze him. And just when it seemed like all hope was lost, they heard their father's voice calling from downstairs. The man standing in front of them froze, then vanished without a trace. Just then, another father started walking up the stairs. The 2 daughters were completely terrified. They had no idea which one was the real dad anymore. At the same time, their mother suddenly appeared. She picked up the hammer from the floor without saying a word, swung it straight at Gangu. Gangu shielded the kids with his own body, holding them tightly, but his wife, like a woman possessed, attacked with full force, as if she truly wanted to kill him. The once frail and gentle woman now had terrifying strength. She even stepped barefoot on shattered glass without making a sound. Gangu watched her walk into the room only to see her coming up the stairs again from downstairs the very next second. He was stunned. He opened the door to check, but the crazed version of his wife had vanished without a trace. That's when Gangu finally realized something unholy had entered their home, and it almost certainly had to do with that strange neighbor. Fearing for his family, he immediately called his younger brother for help. Jung-soo, once a priest, instantly recognized it for what it was. The demon had returned for revenge. He headed to the neighbor's house to investigate, but the moment he stepped near, a cold wind swept through the area. The demon was nearby. Inside the house, Junsu made a grim discovery. The young man who once lived there was now nothing but a heavily decayed corpse. Even Junsu, with all his exorcism experience, felt a chill of dread. To protect the family, he suggested they all sleep in the same room that night to prevent the demon from picking them off one by one. But deep into the night, the youngest son got up alone to use the bathroom, and that's when the demon struck. Holding a fruit knife, it crept silently into the room. Its first target, the exorcist himself. But Junsu was protected by layers of divine blessings. The demon, in its current state, couldn't harm him. Junsu watched carefully, realizing the demon had the power to shapeshift into family members. With stakes this high, he knew he needed backup. He decided to call in his master, an elder priest who agreed to fly in from Europe to help with the exorcism. The next morning, Junsu prepared to pick him up at the airport. Before leaving, he gave his brother a serious warning. Keep a close eye on Sunwoo. Last night, I mixed holy water into everyone's drinking cups. This morning, she was the only one who didn't drink it. That demon is probably inside her. Junsu rushed to the airport and successfully picked up his mentor. The two immediately drove toward Gangu's house. But on the way, a massive flock of crows suddenly descended, slamming into the car in a violent frenzy. The vehicle flew off the road, crashing down a steep hillside. Whether they lived or died, no one knew. Back at home, the demon had already begun its massacre. Hyunju ran to the storage room, desperate to find a crucifix for protection. Just then she heard her sister's voice calling her from behind.
현주야.
Before she could even turn around, an invisible force grabbed her and dragged her into the furnace. In an instant, Hyunju was burned alive, reduced to nothing but ashes. Back in the living room, Gangu was still in the dark. He stayed glued to his eldest daughter, Sunwoo, watching her every move. But then, Sunwoo insisted on going out to look for her sister. That one strange request set off alarm bells in Gangu's mind. It didn't feel right. To him, it confirmed what he already feared. Sunwoo was the demon. Without hesitation, Gangu took action. He struck her unconscious and tied her tightly to the bed. But what he didn't realize was that things were far from over. Right at that moment, Junsu, covered in blood, returned home alone. From the look on his face, it was clear his mentor hadn't survived the accident. There was no time to explain. Junsu immediately began preparing for an exorcism. He gave the couple one final warning. This demon is a master of disguise. It may cry, it may beg, it might look exactly like your child. But whatever happens, do not stop the ritual. If you do, no one, not even God, can save you. Then the ritual began. Junsu poured holy water onto Sunwoo's body, then started whipping her with a bundle of sacred twigs. Her skin tore open, blood poured down her arms. She screamed in agony as if the demon was being torn from her soul. But it was all a lie, because the real Junsu was still at the scene of the car accident, waiting to be rescued. The priest now performing the ritual was actually the demon. Sunwoo lay on the bed, barely breathing, her body a mess of bruises and blood. Her mother couldn't take it anymore, tears streaming down her face. She rushed in to stop the ritual, but that one act of compassion shattered Gangu's trust. He stared at his wife, and suddenly, a terrible thought crossed his mind. She was possessed, too. Without thinking, he grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head against the wall. She dropped to the floor, dazed and injured. At that moment, the demon could no longer contain its twisted joy. It threw its head back and let out a cold, victorious laugh. It pinned Gangu to the ground and raised a knife, ready to plunge it straight into his chest. But just as death loomed over him, a passage from the Bible echoed in the demon's ears.
주님 몰아내주소서!
In an instant, the demon turned into black smoke and began to fade away. Gangu narrowly escaped with his life. At that very moment, Sunwoo appeared bruised, battered, and covered in wounds.
나한테 왜 그랬어?
As a father, Gangu was overwhelmed with guilt. He kept blaming himself and apologized to Sunwoo again and again. Just when the father and daughter were about to break down in each other's arms, Junsu suddenly caught onto the demon's trick. He held up a bronze mirror and forced it to reveal its true form.
Cielo, cielo, usque ad infernus versus 프레이체스 엑사우디온.
The priest launched a head-on spiritual battle against the demon, but to everyone's shock, the demon had reached terrifying levels of power. It even started chanting Bible verses just like the priest.
Gloria patri et filio et spiritus. Resistere potestis.
Kimin tiberton!
Domini Iesu Christi
Usei inimon enimon!
Seizing the moment, the demon tackled the priest to the ground, overpowering him completely. Thankfully, Gangu, our resident genius with absurdly high IQ, found some holy water and splashed it onto the demon, leaving it writhing in pain. This gave the priest a much-needed breather. He managed to break free from the demon's grip, though deep down he knew he was no match for it. That's when Junsu made a bold and selfless decision. He took off the cross from around his neck, prayed to the Lord, and vowed to trap the demon's soul within his own body. A desperate but necessary move. The demon turned into a thick cloud of smoke. It entered Junsu, possessing his body, but Junsu was no ordinary man. His consciousness wasn't overtaken right away. He knew what had to be done. He was ready to sacrifice himself and take the demon down with him. He begged Gangu to drive the cross through his heart. Gangu couldn't bring himself to hurt his sworn brother. There was even a tender emotional scene between them, but for time's sake, let's skip that part. In the end, the demon was completely destroyed. And with that, the curtains fell on the film.